Welcome to the Nigerian Pride. Today, the 6th of July 2022. I am Lion Olusokunbi, and today we'll be looking at Boris Johnson and his premiership. It's looking likely that we are coming to the beginning of the end. Not even beginning of the end. We are coming to the end of the end for this premiership that has lasted just well over almost 3 years, I would say now. Yeah, almost 3 years. And what we'll be looking at generally is just to say, who is Boris Johnson? How did it turn out to be the Prime Minister? And what are the things he's faced so far? Well, since yesterday, after the resignation of Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, the Exchequer, and Savage Javid, the former Health Secretary, we've had many other resignations coming in. And this is on the back of the case of Pincher. That the Prime Minister, well enough, knows about this and appointed this man, and then here we are. But the question is, for me, part of the question to ask is that these ministers who are resigning now, did they not know about Mr. Pincher before now? They've sat in meeting rooms with Mr. Pincher for so long, and it's not until now, and everything they want to put on the Prime Minister. Bear in mind, I'm not trying to be a solicitor for the Prime Minister. I'm just trying to be as critical as possible on everybody. But more or less, the focus today will be on no other person than Alexander Boris Johnson. I mean, when you look at it, what the questions we can ask, the first question would be, okay, when did Boris Johnson become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and the Northern Ireland? Where was he born? How many times was he elected as the Mayor of London? What was Boris Johnson's opinion of the United Kingdom leaving the EU, also known as Brexit? And did Boris Johnson write a book about Churchill, Winston Churchill? These are some of the questions I'll be looking to answer today, and then look deeply into everybody, others people resigning and taking up appointments and then telling the Prime Minister who has just appointed them to go. How funny our politics has become in the United Kingdom. He was born on the 19th of June 1964 in the city called New York. That's in New York, USA. We can refer to him as an American-born British person. He was a journalist, Conservative Party politician, and he became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in July 2019. So we're talking about almost 3 years, maybe a few days to 3 years now for him as Prime Minister. He had earlier served as the second elected Mayor of London between 2008 and 2016. And as the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs from 2016 to 2018, and that was under Prime Minister Theresa May. Boris Johnson, born in New York, lived in Brussels, lived in London, before attending boarding school again in England, won a scholarship to Eton College, later studied at Balliol College, Oxford, and he was the president of Oxford Union whilst there. Briefly worked as a management consultant and embarked on a career in journalism after that. He was a reporter at the Times in 1987, but was fired for fabricating quotation. Mark that, fabricating quotation. He was fired for that. All right. And then he started working for the Daily Telegraph, where he served as the correspondent for the European Community between 89 and 94, and later became the assistant editor between 1994 and 99. He became the political columnist for The Spectator in 1994, and in 1999 was named as the magazine's editor and continued in that role until 2005. Boris Johnson. Wow. That's just a brief of him. You can see he's always been a politician, right from school. In 1997, Boris Johnson was selected as the candidate for the Conservative for Clyde South in the House of Commons, but he lost that election. Yeah, he lost that election to Martin Jones of the Labour Party. But after that, something happened. Boris Johnson became a very popular figure on TV, nationwide. I would say countrywide. BBC talk program, I've got news for you, and all those things. And his bubbling nature has always been there all this while. He's always bubbling when you see him. Never say never. And eventually, 2001, he contested in the Elling-on-Thames constituency, and right that time he won and went into the House of Commons 2001. Wow. 18 years after he became the Prime Minister of the UK. What a man. One thing we have to look at here is that we've known already with his experience. When he was sacked for fabricating quotation at the Times. But what happened? That does not stop him. Right, maybe the public forgave him and then he was able to continue. And what we have today, we will say, is as a result of our own doing. Because I see many people calling him liar. And I'll be like, we built it. We allowed him. He was caught fabricating quotation. He was sacked by the Times, yet the Conservative Party allowed him to continue. The people allowed him to continue. And here we are. 2001, he became an MP, a member of parliament, and that was the beginning of it all. 2007, he ran for the office of Mayor of London against Ken Livingstone. And yes, by the 1st of May 2008, Johnson won narrowly. He won narrowly. And that was on the back of Labour losing the national election as well under Gordon Brown. Remember, he was an MP when he stood for the Mayor of London. And one promise he made during campaign was that if he wins the election, he will step down as an MP. And guess what he did when he won? He immediately stepped down. Note something. Boris Johnson has got an history of fulfilling his promise whenever he runs for office. When he was campaigning to become the Prime Minister, I remember then, he promised that the post-study work visa will be brought back. That was taken away by his predecessors. One when she was the Home Secretary, and the other when he was the Prime Minister. I'm talking about David Cameron and Theresa May respectively. He promised he was going to bring it back. He promised he was going to get a deal with the EU and take the UK out of the EU to fulfill Brexit. Whichever way you look at it, he's done that. He delivered it. He delivered it. Like I said before, I'm not here to be solicitor. I'm just trying to let us look at the man, Boris Johnson. Alexander Boris the Philip Johnson. How much this man came about himself to today and became the Prime Minister. After being elected on the 1st of May 2008 as the Mayor of London, he ran again in 2012 and was re-elected, again beating Livingston to it. And even though the Conservative Party lost over 800 seats across Britain, for those of you who don't know what the home nations making up Britain, that's England, Wales, and Scotland. That's Britain. That win, the re-election for him as the Mayor of London, was really what gave him that edge. What gave him the stage to launch really at what he's been looking for today. His return to Parliament in 2015 was not surprising because he was you would know that yes, he was, once he won the second term as Mayor of London, yes, he knew the next thing for him was to go back to the House of Commons and then try to become the Prime Minister. And the pace, the stage was set. He returned 2015 winning the West London seat for Uxbridge and South Ruislip. And that was the election that saw the Conservative capture its first clear majority since the 90s. He was still at the same time the Mayor of London. And that was the time people knew that he would be a contender against the premiership of David Cameron and the leadership of the Conservative Party. What a man. What a man. I'll stop at that point. So you know what's going on so far. Just to give you a list of those who have resigned already. So in the cabinet itself, we've only got 2 resignations of cabinet ministers. Just Chancellor Rishi Sunak and Health Secretary Sajid Javid. Those 2 are the only 2 cabinet ministers who have resigned so far. We've had other junior ministers like Will Quince, the Education Minister, Solicitor General Alex Chalk, on and on like that. If I look at the number there, so about 15 ministers have also resigned. If we look at the PPS, that's the Parliamentary Private Secretaries, we've had quite a number of those as well, and about other 3. Now we have some who are undeclared, like the Attorney General, the Wales Secretary, the Cabinet Office Minister, the Home Office Minister, the Cabinet Office Minister Nigel Adams, and Leader of the House of Lords Baroness Evans. We know there are some who are with him, like the new Chancellor, Nadim Zahawi, who is still there, the new Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, the new Education Secretary, Michelle Donlan, and we still have Dominic Raab, standing firm, Pritik Patel, Ben Wallace, and others still there. Now, this is the question. People keep saying, oh, Michael Gove and a team of people are going. But the truth of the matter is, The Conservative Party are saying they want to get this man out of office. But only 2 of the cabinet ministers have resigned. And as a political scientist, and as a politician, and as an analyst, I look at it and be like, there's something critically going on here. And you should all have done this when we have issues of the party gates, which were really real issues, which should have been focused on, which should have been looked at, and should have been, the thing to do. However, when the case of Pincher came up, now don't take it that the Pincher case is not important. It is important, but I think it's upon all of them in that cabinet. Because if Pincher had a case before under the premiership of Theresa May in the office of the Foreign Affairs, yes, which was led by himself then, Boris Johnson. Remember, Boris Johnson resigned later under Theresa May before running for leadership. Now, when he was brought forward, I believe there should have been questions asked by all the so-called cabinet ministers or ministers now resigning from the cabinet and from the government. I always say, politics is the game of the hypocrites. Hypocrisy here and there. But one thing I'm saying to the country today is that if Boris survives the next 24 hours, if he survives the next 24 hours, then there's no point anybody shouting anymore. Let's just wait 2 years' time, have the general election. From Scotland, we've said if if the referendum is not allowed to go ahead next year, then the general election will be the de facto one. Let's face the referendum. Let's face the general election in 2024, and let the people decide. Jacob Morris was saying yesterday that the people voted for Boris Johnson, and I think he may be right to an extent. When the predecessor of Boris Johnson called that snap election, that's in the person of Theresa May, she thought she was going to win overwhelmingly. But the Conservative returned as a minority in government and needed the help of the DUP. But when Theresa May went away and Boris came, Boris won a landslide election. Big win, winning seats where Conservatives have never won before. And the question is, at that time, were people voting for Boris Johnson, or were they voting for the candidate they have in their constituencies? A lot of the Conservative MPs today won their seats because of the leadership of Boris Johnson. I mean, some spectators have said, he should call a snap election and let's see how many of the Conservative MPs will come back. Of course, I think the man has been thinking of the party, which is why he's not calling a snap election, and he has denied it today that he's going to call that. Chris Pincher's case came up. He was sacked immediately, taken out immediately, or maybe taken out anyway, I won't say immediately, taken out and everything. But is the Pincher's case more serious than the rising cost of living? Is it more serious than the fact that today we are thinking of should we be spending our money on eating or heating the house? Which one? Is this case more important than the war in Ukraine? Is this case more important than the fact that asylum seekers would be sent to Rwanda? Is this case more serious than the fact that jailed criminals, will be sent to Nigeria? It's important for us to pay attention and not be carried away by what's happening. There's a lot going on. And if the people we have elected to run the affairs of our government are trying to mess us around, we as the electorate, as the voters, we need to think critically and see how we can make things better. And we know how to do it is by voting for those we believe in and voting out those we don't believe in. Let's stop a bit. Let's go back and look at this man. How did he even become? How on earth did Boris Johnson live to become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and the Northern Ireland? By the time he was back in the House of Commons and still the mayor, people were saying, oh, there was no way he was going to return as the mayor of London, even if he stood for re-election in 2016. But the Brexit campaign came alive. And this is one of the things I say about this man. He knows when to strike. He saw the opportunity in Brexit. He became one of the leading spokesmen for the Leave campaign. By June 23, in the run-up to the June 23, 2016 national referendum on whether the UK should remain a member of the European Union, that was when he actually tested his mental coming face to face with the leadership of David Cameron. And we all saw it, we all witnessed it. He won David Cameron because David Cameron was a Remainer, he was a Leaver. He won David Cameron, 52% of the vote to leave, 48% to remain. And that led to David Cameron leaving office as the Prime Minister. At this point, some of us already started saying Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Because we were all like, okay, he's done it. He's going to be the successor. But then the one we call the squealer of all, Michael Gove, who was the Justice Secretary then, who had worked alongside Johnson on the Leave campaign, just concluded that no, he was not backing Johnson's candidacy, and that led to the emergence of Theresa May as the leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister. You know, we saw the highest level of betrayal there, and which makes me look at it today that, yeah, it's politics, you can say that, but how will a Boris Johnson then be bringing someone like this Michael Gove into his government? But we understand, because he's a squealer, you have to keep squealer closer to you. For those who have read Animal Farm by George Orwell, you know what I mean by that. As Foreign Secretary, obviously we knew it was going to be tough. There, when you have a Remainer as the Prime Minister in Theresa May and you have a Leaver as the Foreign Secretary. The snap election by Theresa May for June 2017 led to a lot of Conservative MPs losing their seats. And that election really shook May. And if you remember, in April 2018, Johnson defended May's decision to join the United States and France in strategic airstrikes that were undertaken against the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in response to evidence of him having used chemical weapons on the people. Opposition parties were critical of this. But looking at all of this and everything that happened therein, by the time the pressure of Brexit got on Theresa May, that it was being soft, and after Brexit Secretary David Davis resigned on July 8th, saying he could not continue as Britain's chief negotiator with the EU, as May was giving too much away too easily. Johnson followed suit on July the 9th to say, yeah, that was it for me too, tendering his own letter as well. Jeremy Hunt became the replacement for Johnson. And this led to Johnson becoming a great critic of May. Johnson, being known already as one of the leading spokesmen for Leave, started criticizing this soft Remainer in Prime Minister Theresa May. If you remember, Theresa May failed twice to win the support of the House of Commons for his plans for Brexit. And on March 27, 2019, after a meeting with all the top people of the Conservative Party, Theresa May pledged to step down as Prime Minister if Parliament approved her plan. At that point, Johnson rallied round his allies. That since he said if we support the plan, she's leaving, yes, we'll do it. But then, once again, it failed. And as a result of that, May had no other thing to do than to resign as the party leader on June the 7th, same year, but remained as the caretaker Prime Minister until her party had chosen a successor, which of course saw Boris Johnson go head-to-head with Jeremy Hunt, Michael Gove, and Sajid Javid. After Michael Gove and Javid fell by the sideway, it was a straight fight between Johnson and Hunt. And we all saw what happened. After nearly 160,000 eligible members of the Conservative Party voted, 87% of those eligible voters participated and elevated Johnson to the leadership when the results were announced on July 23rd. Precisely 92,153 votes for Johnson and 46,656 for Jeremy Hunt. This is why Jacobs keeps saying that the people voted for Boris Johnson. He won that leadership tussle and then went head to head with Jeremy Corbyn. Yes. Went head to head with Jeremy Corbyn, and that's in that keenly contested general election. And on the 24th of July, Johnson officially became Prime Minister. Then, and a lot happened. We can remember the case of him having a prorogue on the house and things like that. There's so many things Boris Johnson have done. But what you come down to see is that, has Boris Johnson ever delivered on any of his political promises as a career politician? To a large extent, yes. But then his personality has always been the question around him. It has always been. Always been. And we don't know what will happen at this point. The call for him to go keeps rising. I now want to bring the funnel down to the ethnic minority in this country. So, Boris Johnson, David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson. Different laws have changed, different immigration laws have changed under Boris Johnson, different laws coming in. And I keep telling people, I've never seen a lenient prime minister with immigration as much as Boris Johnson. Let's be clear about it. Let's be critical about it. The government of David Cameron and Theresa May wanted to cut down immigration by hundreds of thousands, not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. That led to students being counted, international students being counted as part of that. That led to the curtailing of post-study work visa. That led to a lot of people who would have progressed to post-study work visa and progressed even to start their own jobs or their own companies or even get jobs that will sponsor them for work, all of a sudden having to seek asylum or one thing or the other. That led to the higher education sector of the UK losing billions of pounds because international students were now coming around. That led to the closure of many programs, many courses. That led to the loss of jobs for many academics. Let's start bringing the figures together. That led to the collapse of businesses in some communities where it is the university that helps the economy. Has Teesside University. But what happened all of a sudden? Boris Johnson came in, ordered the post-study work visa to return, and what have we witnessed? Sudden explosion in the number of international students coming back to the UK. The economy around all the universities across the UK suddenly boomed. Like it or not, we are going to welcome tens of thousands of students again by September. Bringing in not just the money they are coming to spend here, but bringing in more businesses. Giving businesses lifeline. Those community businesses a lifeline. Creating more jobs. Right from the cleaning job to the topmost of managerial jobs. the visas all changed. Now you just need a job that pays you about 27K. You're able to stay and things like that. More members, particularly more members, particularly of the African and the Caribbean communities in the UK, got more employment opportunities. A whole lot, in fact. Maybe as a result of Brexit, and as a result of the change in the rules, it became a more balanced field. And I say, as bad as it may look for the premiership of Boris Johnson, he has indeed laid down some policies and he has indeed got some legacies we'll never forget. Remember, he's even been the proponent of the eradication of the acronym BAME, Black, Asian, and Minority Ethnic Groups. I asked those questions for some friends the other day. Are you happy to be classed as BAME? And most of them are like, no, I want to be known as African. I want to be known as Caribbean. I want to be known as a Brazilian. I want to be known as a Chilean. I want to be known as a Mexican. I want to be known as a Jamaican. Not just black. I want to be known as a Chinese. So why is it? And I'm putting this to all the government, even the devolved government in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland. When will these governments be ready to accept that it is better for each people to identify themselves in the best way they want to be known, rather than giving an acronym to cover everybody? When we know that some who are part of this group should not even be classed as minorities anymore. Because when you look at the political setup, they've achieved it all. The only office remaining for them, if you look at the UK and Scotland, for example, as the prime ministership position and the first minister position. Yes. They have lots of teachers, they have lots of doctors, they have lots of businesses, they have been given the opportunity and the atmosphere to explore and to expand themselves and to improve themselves and to fulfill their potentials. Oh, hi, yes, many Africans are owning charitable organizations, owning CICs, but where is the melting point for the Africans, in fact? Because it's one thing to say, oh, you're a minority of minorities, but how are you even helping your situation as well? I remember there was a time the Conservative Party tried to form, is it Friends of Conservative, African Friends of Conservative, or Friends of Conservative Africa, or something like that. And before we knew what was happening, people were forming conservative friends of conservative Ghana, Cameroon, and I was like, what is this? And that was down in England. And even if you look into Scotland here, Africans, how are you coming together? The government wants to help the African community, but the government does not know who to speak to, because you are all scattered. Everyone is running after the fulfillment of his own selfish interests. People will say, well, Olu, you're talking about Boris Johnson. Yes, because Boris Johnson understands the diversity and the egalitarian nature of the African community. And he's been able to just deal with it in a way. We are highly egalitarian. that is known as Africans. But it's getting to a point where if we don't come together, our future, the future of our children, may be worse than what it was for us. And that's why, on a day like this, when it's looking like the end of the Boris Johnson premiership, the African community needs to sit upright. You need to sit upright. It's time to come together. It's time to bridge all those lacunas, fill the gaps in. It's time for all the bridges to come together and have a unit. I know the African Council exists. I know there is the Afro-Caribbean Network. So many borders. But it's time for everyone to come together. It's time to leave out ego, selfish interest, just for the future of our children in this land. If Scotland becomes independent tomorrow, if the referendum proposed for October 19, 2023 should go ahead, and if that referendum comes back as Scotland to be independent, where will be the place of Africans and their descendants in an independent Scotland? How are we positioning ourselves for such eventuality? How are we even positioning ourselves for the present day Scotland? Politically, business-wise, in our careers, everything. Yes, we have the Black Professional Scotland doing great work, the Nigerian Pride, Jambo Radio, so many sons and daughters doing great work. But I think, and I know, it's time for every one of us to come together. Let's come together and sit together and speak with one voice for us to advance in this land. Our comrades and family members in the United States, they did it, and we saw the result, and we can see the result. It's time for us to come together. On this note, as all the journalists are there waiting to see if Boris Johnson will throw in the towel, it's a time to reflect, not only for Boris Johnson, but also for our community. Let's reflect on it. What do we expect, or what should we expect of the next Prime Minister? What should we expect of the next Home Secretary? What should we expect of the next Health Secretary? What should we expect of the next Education Secretary? The impact of this will be felt for a long time in our community. For us to elevate it, we need to come together and unite. But if Boris Johnson escapes this again, if he overcomes this again, then he will be called the cat with 9 lives. On that note, I will be saying, have a good evening. Let's watch the drama at number 10 as it unfolds. Next week, Nigerian Pride will focus on what is happening also in the political terrain in Nigeria. We're moving closer to the general elections of 2023. Campaign should start by September. Many of the politicians are moving up and down, the parties are moving here and there, and we'll be having one of the politicians, one of the leaders of one of the largest political parties on the show next week. Until then, keep safe. Coronavirus is not away, it's still very much here. Please keep safe and watch out for one another. My name is Lion Olushokunbi. Good evening.